Okay. Is everybody ready?
Yes, she's outside.
Let's go ahead and bring in the jury. Okay. State will call the next witness.
The state calls Peggy Banks.
Peggy Banks. Please turn toward Mr. Chase, and he will swear you in.
All right, Ms. Banks, if you could please raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Put your hand down. Please state your true and correct name for the record.
Peggy Ann Banks.
And Ms. Banks, are you currently working?
No, I'm retired.
Where did you retire from?
I retired from the state of Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
And what did you do there?
I wore many hats during the 20 years that I was there. I started as a secretary, became a legal secretary, then a legal assistant, then an investigative assistant.
So after 20 years, you retired, correct?
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk a little bit about some of your family. Do you know a person by the name of Regina Banks?
My daughter,
And Tessa Daniel?
my granddaughter,
How about Millie? Do you know a person by the name of Millie?
my great-granddaughter,
All right. And how about Layla Daniel?
my great-granddaughter.
Tell me a little bit about when Millie was first born. How much interaction did you have with Millie when she was first born?
Well, first of all, I was there when she emerged into this world, just inches away. And then when her mother when she was home with her mother would get overwhelmed by the details and taking care of an infant and adding that to everything else she had to do. So she would call me up and ask me to come over and help.
How close did you live?
About a mile.
How often did you see Millie when she was very young?
Frequently. I started taking her with me to church every weekend. Well, she would come and stay with me every weekend. I had a baby bed at the house and everything. And she started going to church and never missed a Sunday when she was just a few months old.
Who was Millie living with when she was first born?
She went home to live with her mother, her grandmother, and her aunt and uncle.
How about when Layla was born? Did the living situation change at all?
Yes, they were no longer in a small rental home. They were now in a large house that my daughter bought. It had 3 bedrooms and 2 baths upstairs. And then the downstairs basement was as big as the upstairs was, and it was divided into 3 smaller rooms and 1 large room and another bathroom. And basically, Tessa and Millie and Layla lived downstairs. And upstairs was Tessa's sister Jillian and her brother Dalton and her mother Gina.
How far was this home from your home?
Between a mile and 2 miles.
Did you see Layla as often as you saw Millie when she was first born?
No, and there were a lot of reasons for that. I saw her, of course, every time I went over there, but she was being well cared for. She had her mother and her grandmother there watching her, and her aunt and her uncle. Even though they had lived with her at the previous house, this was just a whole much bigger and nicer setup. And as far as I could tell, they were taking good care of her. And then Layla's aunt, on her daddy's side, would spend a lot of time with her as well. There were family members on that side.
Now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Tell me, to your knowledge, did Layla have any medical conditions when she was born?
No,
Did she have any medical conditions the entire time that she was alive that you're aware of?
no.
What about Millie?
No, she had some slight sniffles during seasonal allergies season, but other than that.
Tell me a little bit more about Layla when she was a baby. How was she as far as being an eater?
Oh, that girl would eat everything in sight.
Okay.
She had no problems with food.
No problems with food. How was she, and this goes for her entire life, how was she, as far as you're aware, as far as the potty training, how was she doing on that?
She was doing very well. She would let us know when she had to go.
Was she an active child?
Very.
How would you describe her temperament?
Normal for a toddler her age. If you tried to take a toy away from her, she wasn't very happy, but otherwise she loved playing with her sister and going places with us. We'd take her to the splash pad or the swimming pool or someplace at the park. She enjoyed that.
Now, at some point, did the children stop living with Tessa?
Yes.
And why did they stop living with Tessa?
Tessa became aware that she was about to be sent to jail and wanted to make sure that her kids were taken care of in her absence. And her mother worked, so her mother said she had a friend that would take them in because the friend's daughter lived with her and the daughter had a child Layla's age.
And what about Millie? Who did Millie go live with?
She went with them as well, and I didn't know anything about this beforehand.
All right, well, tell me a little bit about your health at the time when this was going on. How was your health at that point?
Tenable.
All right, what do you mean by that?
Well, the previous year I had had a hip replacement and a thyroidectomy. And then the year after that, well, Layla died on November 17th. And on November 18th of the following year, I lost my mother. Then in 2018, I underwent 5 surgeries, including one for breast cancer. And I was really traumatized by the death and everything that happened before and after.
Okay. I want to go back though to like the 2014 era when the children were first going to live with Miss Tate and ultimately Millie went to go live somewhere else. Tell me why the girls didn't. Could they come live with you?
As far as I was concerned, I would love to have had them, but I live in a 55 and older community where children are not allowed. And I guess that's why they were sent somewhere else.
Okay. At some point, prior to the girls going into foster care, did either child ever live with you?
Yes, Millie's, the family she was put with sent her to live with, well, she was living with the Miss Tate and Miss Tate's daughter. Miss Tate's ex-husband and his new wife lived up on the other side of Gainesville, Georgia, and she was sent to live with them.
And at some point, you actually went up there and got them, correct? Or got Millie?
Yes, I went up there about every other weekend, and every other weekend they would come down here. So I always got visits with Millie, sometimes with Layla, if I would go to Miss Tate's house.
You didn't go to Miss Tate's house very often, though, did you?
Not very often. Usually she was off with her aunt. Layla was.
So you did not see Layla nearly as much as you saw Millie during
No.
this time period. And when I said you went up and got Millie, you actually took her without, I guess, the Chapmans knowing. Is that correct?
Well, without them knowing my intent.
Yes.
Obviously they saw when I picked her up and put her in my car and drove off.
And then were the police called?
They did contact the police because, unbeknownst to me at that time, they had gone to DFAX and got a case started on her. I was totally unaware of that.
So prior to that, you had no idea that DFAX was even involved?
No.
DFAX, however, I guess remained involved in the children's life thereafter. Is that a guess?
Yes.
Okay. So you, did Millie ever come and live with you at your 55 and older community?
Yes. When I got her from them, she stayed with me in my home for about 5 months until at one HOA monthly meeting, I was told that they were aware that she was there and that was against the rules and she couldn't stay.
At that point, is that when the girls went into foster care?
Yes, Miss Tate's daughter had been taking care of Layla, and she was going back to school, so she could no longer care for Layla at the same time that I could no longer care for Millie. So we had to go to juvenile court and let the judge make a decision.
Now, did you offer to keep either girl?
I offered to keep Millie.
Okay. And what about Layla?
Her grandfather wanted her. He was there in the court and he asked for her.
Okay. So family members tried to
Yes.
initially, is that correct? What happened though at that court hearing?
Well, the judge insisted they not be split up.
I can ask you,
I'm sorry, did I use the wrong word?
No, you didn't. You didn't do anything wrong. Let me ask you the question this way. At the end of the court hearing, did Millie go home with you?
No.
And how about at the end of the court hearing, did Layla go home with her grandfather?
No.
What happened to them?
Well, the judge asked for...
It's fine. Do you know where the girls went?
Yes.
Where did they go?
They went home with Millie's paternal grandmother.
And who is that?
Her name is Elaine Place.
How long did Miss Place keep the girls?
Well, she got them on Wednesday, and 2 days later on Friday, she took them to DFAX, dropped them off, and said, I don't want to be a mom.
At that point, do you know where the girls were placed? Which foster parent?
That's when they went to live with Miss Brown.
Okay. And when they were with Miss Brown, did you ever see either of the girls?
Yes, I had weekly visits with them. I would meet Miss Brown at a designated place in Stockbridge and take the girls from her car into mine. There were times when I only got Millie. Sometimes I got both of them.
When you would get both of them, were you able to care for both of them by yourself?
No, because I have back problems and I couldn't lift her. I wouldn't have been able to pick her up and put her on the bed to change her diaper.
And when you're saying her, who are you referring to?
Layla.
No, you're fine.
And so sometimes I would have help, though. My sister or a friend would come over to help me, and in those days I would get both of them.
Now, how long did the girls stay with you when you had these visits?
Usually from about 9 or 10 in the morning till about 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
So these were just day visits? visits?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Full days.
Full days. At any point when the children were placed with Miss Brown, did you ever notice any bruising or any injuries on them?
No, I can't recall any.
When they were with Miss Brown, did you ever have any concerns for their safety?
No.
Eventually they were placed with Miss Lambert, correct?
Yes.
All right. How often would you see, or excuse me, would you see either of the girls when they were placed with Miss Lambert?
Yes.
And how often would you see them?
That would be weekly visitation as well.
Now, did you get to see both of them or just one of them?
I would take both when I had someone to help me with Layla.
Was that all the time?
I can't recall whether I had her a couple of times from Miss Lambert or a couple of times from Miss Brown. Maybe both, I don't know.
When they were with Miss Lambert, did you ever see or observe any injuries or bruising?
No.
Did you ever have any concerns for their safety?
No.
Now, did you, when you had the children, did you ever talk to them about whether or not they needed to behave with their foster parents?
Always. My favorite expression to Millie was, remember, yes ma'am and mind. Yes ma'am and mind. It's ingrained in her brain. Yes ma'am and mind. I always taught them to be respectful and to do whatever the parent asked them to do.
So did you ever tell them they did not have to live with, or listen to their foster parents?
No, I would never tell them that.
How did Millie feel, to your knowledge and from what you could observe, about not being able to live with you anymore?
Well, Millie was a Nana's girl. She wanted me. She always wanted me. And I think there were times when...
I mean, it could fall under child hearsay. I don't even think it's hearsay at all. She's simply making an expression of describing what she observed as far as Millie and wanting to remain with her. I don't think we're not offering for the truth of the matter, sir.
Well, is it based upon what the child said to her?
It is.
Sustained objection.
Don't tell me what Millie said, okay? How about what did you observe as far as her demeanor?
Millie was a very loving child toward me. She loved her Nana more than anything or anybody. We were very close, and she preferred to be with me than anybody.
I don't think it calls for hearsay. I think it's simply her interpretation of what she observed from her granddaughter who was 4 years old.
I don't know how it is that she's gleaned this understanding. It's through statements or it's through something else. And so I presume it's through statements. It seems to me the way that one gets this information, I suppose it's possible to get through demeanor as well. I'm going to ask that you do some clarifying, and that's where we are.
Based upon her demeanor, okay, folks have just done that. What was your interpretation as far as how, as far as Millie's desire to remain with you?
And she was very clingy. She was always telling me how much she loved me. She knew that I was her...
I'm going to move on.
Sorry.
All right.
Let's talk about the Rosenbaums. Were you familiar with Jennifer Rosenbaum or Joseph Rosenbaum before your grandchildren or great-grandchildren ever got placed with them?
No.
What's the first time you ever heard the name Jennifer Rosenbaum?
The day that we were in court, when the judge awarded both of the children to this place, I was told after that.
Okay, let me make it real clear. Based upon what you were told, were you then had you then heard the name Jennifer Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Okay. What was, had you, and you had never heard that name before, correct?
No.
Did you ever, how did you come to find out that the children were even going to be placed with Jennifer Rosenbaum?
I believe it was Miss Lambert that told me that.
And Judge, at this point, we're simply laying the foundation as to how we get to the next part. Ms. Lambert has already testified. And so I don't see the harm. We're not offering for the truth of the matter asserted. We're simply trying to establish how she first came to know where her great-grandchildren were.
Goes to foundation, yeah.
Well, it's hearsay, it's right hearsay. I would object to it coming in.
Assisting objection.
Okay, let's talk about conversations that you had with Ms. Rosenbaum. How about that? Did you ever have a conversation with Jennifer Rosenbaum?
I initiated contact with her through email. I emailed her to introduce myself and to tell her all that I had learned about her and read about her and how accomplished she was for a young lady, and how happy I was that the children would be. They were initially spending weekends with her to get used to them, to the Rosenbaums, and then the plan was that they would go to live with them as fosters.
Okay. So you testified that you were happy about this.
Mm-hmm.
Why were you happy about this?
Well, it looked good on writing. She had allegedly accomplished all these wonderful things. She said that she was an attorney. She said that she had gotten a scholarship for college, had graduated from college, was now in Emory Law School, or she had gone to Emory Law School, and she loved her job as an attorney. And then she said that her husband had a bachelor's degree and he was in law enforcement.
Now, did you email with her quite a bit?
Yes.
Is that the primary way that you communicated, or did you communicate other ways as well?
We had occasional phone call, and I would see her when we exchanged the children, or we would meet up. We would talk in person.
Now, did she indicate how she knew your granddaughter, Tessa?
Yes, she said that she and Tessa were friends, that they had been in foster care together. And Tessa denied that relationship as such. She said that they were...
Sustained.
Okay.
Here's the thing, we can't talk about what other people said, all
I
right?
gotcha.
All right. Let me ask you about this. Tell me about the first time that you met Joseph.
I usually met Jennifer to get the children, but she had to be somewhere class or something, and so she set it up for me to meet Joseph at McDonald's and get him from him. And so I did, and I had a friend with me, so we took both girls. And when I first saw him, since I hadn't met him and I was familiar with his wife and all about their home and everything, I just went up and hugged his neck. I'm a hugger. And he was like, very stiff and formal about it.
Okay. So again, at this point, were you still happy that your great-grandchildren were with the Rosenbaums?
I had no reason not to be at that point.
Now, did either Jennifer or Joseph ever mention anything regarding the bathing arrangements, like how the children were bathed?
Yes.
What was your understanding from what they told you?
That Jennifer only bathed one of them, I think, or that Joseph was the only one who bathed them or something. I'm mixed up on
She doesn't know she needs to
Ma'am, to the best of your recollection, what was your
To the
understanding?
best of my recollection, Joseph bathed Millie and Jennifer bathed Layla.
But are you 100% sure about that? Or?
No,
And it's okay to
to
tell
the
us if you're
best of
not.
my recollection.
Ma'am, I don't mean to pry.
I might have it backwards.
Ma'am, I don't mean to pry. How old are you?
I'll be 72 next month.
And how's your memory sometimes?
Spotty, comes and goes. Sometimes it's very accurate, and other times it's just not there.
Okay. And so what we'll do here today is I want you to be to the best of your recollection, okay?
Okay.
And if you don't remember something, it's okay to say that too, okay? I want to talk about visitation now. Did you ever see the girls when they were living with the Rosenbaums?
Yes.
And what was the arrangement supposed to be when they were living with the Rosenbaums?
Well, I think they were given a month for the girls to acclimate to the new situation, and then my weekly visits would resume after that. But after my first visit, or at my first visit, Jennifer told me that the children needed to be put down for a nap at 1 o'clock. And when I took them back to her after the visit, she asked me, did they sleep at 1 o'clock? I said, well, Layla fell asleep, but Millie didn't fall asleep, so she just had quiet time for an hour. So she then informed me that since Millie didn't take her nap, that she was going to have to bring the girls to me after nap time instead of in the morning, which effectively cut down my visits from whole days to half days.
And so initially you were supposed to have full day visits,
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of went down to half day visits.
Mm-hmm.
If you could say yes or no.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Now, was this something that went through defects, or was this just an arrangement that you had with Ms. Rosenbaum?
With Ms. Rosenbaum.
So you said that first you were seeing them the whole day, and then they went down to half day, correct?
Yes.
Did they ever get shortened any further?
Yes. It wasn't long after that I was told the visits would be every other week instead of every week.
Now, to your knowledge, was Ms. Rosenbaum a busy person?
She was, as far as I know.
Would you communicate about the visitations with her?
Yes.
Did you ever express your frustration about not being able to see your great-grandchildren as much as you'd like?
I don't think so.
Now, when you were supposed to get the girls, did you always get both girls?
No. There were times when I was told that I couldn't have Layla because of various reasons.
And what would some of those reasons be?
Oh, she was sick, or she had just fallen asleep and they didn't want to wake her up, or
To your knowledge, were the girls ever in counseling?
oh yes, there was one time that I couldn't have either of them because Jennifer had told me that they were all going on a trip to South Dakota to her friend's wedding, and they would be gone during my regular day of getting the visitation. So that was my regular day was a Tuesday. Well, when they got back, I asked, could I see them on Thursday instead? And she said, oh no, that's the day the counselor's coming over.
Did you believe they were in counseling the entire the time they were living with the Rosenbaums?
That was my understanding.
Now, what were your feelings when the visits were getting cut back like this?
I wasn't happy about it. But each time Jennifer assured me that she had discussed it with Miss White. Miss White was in agreement with it, and it was,
At this point, did you have any concerns whatsoever about the safety of your great-grandchildren?
not at that point, no.
To your knowledge, was this a temporary placement, or was the plan reunification?
It was reunification,
And with reunification, would that have been with your granddaughter?
yes.
Now, did you ever say anything to Ms. Rosenbaum about the children being abused by their biological mother?
No,
To your knowledge, were the children ever abused by their biological mother?
no, not to my knowledge. I know she was overwhelmed by having to care for them. That's why I tried to take one off her hands as much as possible. She was sometimes neglectful, but never abusive.
Did you ever indicate that they were burned by their biological
No.
mother? Did you ever indicate they were forced to eat feces?
No,
Regarding the counselor, did Jennifer ever mention, you talked about you thought they were in counseling, did Jennifer ever mention them being in counseling in any emails that you received?
yes. Jennifer would say that after a visit with me, Millie was kind of hard to handle. She wouldn't mind, and that she said things like, well, Nana doesn't make me do that. Nana said I don't have to do that. Well, none of that was true. And she allegedly said, Nana lets me eat that kind of stuff. And that wasn't true either. But after visits with me, when Jennifer said Millie was difficult to handle, I said, well, maybe the counselor can help with that.
And did she ever say anything about not seeing the counselor?
No.
Do you recall the date of that? Do you recall the date of that email off the top of your head?
No, sir.
Would it help to refresh your recollection if I were to show you a document?
Yes.
Just let me know when your recollection's been refreshed. Do you recall the date now?
September 20th, 2015.
Was there another indication? Was there another time that Ms. Rosenbaum, another date that Ms. Rosenbaum discussed the children seeing a counselor in an email?
I don't remember.
Would it help to refresh your recollection if I were to show you a document?
Yes, sir.
And just read it to yourself and let me know when your recollection's been refreshed.
Do you want me to read it?
No, but do you see what has your recollection been refreshed as to whether or not there was a previous conversation about a counselor?
Yes.
Okay, and do you see a date? Do you recall the date of that?
August 30th, 2015.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll take that from you. Now, you mentioned a trip to South Dakota. What was your understanding of that trip to South Dakota?
That they were going for a friend of Jennifer's wedding, that they were all flying to South Dakota. And when I did see Millie again after they returned, I asked her, what was it like having your first airplane flight? Did you look down at the clouds? And she just looked.
That's what Millie said.
She's actually not going to say what Millie said.
Let's hear your response.
Okay, let me answer this. What was Millie's response?
She looked puzzled. She didn't say anything.
Did you discuss that with Jennifer?
Well, before Millie could say anything, Jennifer jumped into the conversation and said, we had to use Millie's ticket for Joseph's sister, so she and Joseph had to drive there. And I'm wondering, how do they drive to South Dakota in one day? I don't know.
And then, did you ask Jennifer anything else about that trip to South Dakota?
Oh yeah, I asked her, did they get to see Mount Rushmore while they were there? She replied that they did. And I said, well, did you get some good pictures? And she said, well, no, it was cloudy and overcast, so we didn't get any pictures.
Were you ever able to see any pictures of this trip to South Dakota?
No, I don't believe there ever was one.
Your Honor, objection to what the witness believes that's not part of what she's been testifying to, just for the future.
Response?
No response.
All right.
Ma'am, I want to talk a little bit about some of the injuries that you observed, okay? Did you ever observe any injuries on Layla while she was living with the Rosenbaums?
I observed facial bruising on several occasions, but on
Stop, let's take them in seconds.
okay.
Tell me about the first time that you observed facial bruising.
I asked Jennifer what happened, and she said she had fallen down the stairs. I think she landed her face on a toy.
Did she talk anything about needing medical intervention?
I don't recall.
At that point, did you even question the story?
No. She wasn't used to stairs, and she was a toddler and seemed quite plausible.
Now, you said it a few times. Tell me about the second time that you remember.
Well, she had the same side of her face all bruised up again, and so I asked Jennifer about that, and she said, oh, she had a black eye. The second time was a black eye. She had a black eye. And I said, what happened to her? And she said, oh, she got into a fight with a little boy at daycare, but you should see him. He got the worst of it.
Now, do you recall if Jennifer mentioned what daycare they were in?
If she did, I don't recall. I wouldn't have been familiar with any of them anyway.
Did either Millie or Layla ever talk about going to daycare?
No.
Did you personally ever observe Millie ever having tantrums?
No.
What about hitting?
No.
How about Millie? Did you ever observe Millie having tantrums?
You asked me about Millie. You mean Layla?
Then let me flip it in my head. How about Layla?
Not prior to living with the Rosenbaums, no.
How about after living with the Rosenbaums?
Afterwards, she would sometimes pull Millie's hair. She would, if Millie took a toy that Layla wanted to play with, she would get mad and she'd pull her hair.
Was that pretty much the extent of what you observed then?
Yes.
Were there any other times when you observed any bruising on Layla?
Yes. There was an instance at Noah's Ark when Jennifer was giving a small birthday party for Millie. It was just family, I think. But when I went there, both the girls were in their Halloween costumes, and this was like weeks before Halloween. But Layla's was like an Olaf costume, and it covered her entire body except for like a face. And again, the whole side of her face was bruised.
I'm going to show you it's been previously marked as States 152 for identification purposes and previously shown to defense counsel. Do you recognize States 152?
Yes, I have that same picture on my cell phone.
Okay, and what are we looking at a picture of?
It's at Noah's Ark. Layla is in the costume. Her little face is sticking out. Jennifer is feeding her icing off of a cupcake. And it looks like Jennifer's knuckles are all bruised up too.
And does this fairly and accurately represent what you observed on
Yes.
the day you were at Noah's Ark?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I move into evidence States 152.
Admitted 152.
Ma'am, I have up here on the screen for you States 152. going to give you this laser pointer. And this is the little pointer. Just hit this little button right here. Just don't point it towards anyone's eye, okay?
Okay.
Now, in this photograph, do you see the bruising that you had mentioned that you observed?
Right here, it's in the shape of a hand. You can see the fingers.
And that's what you personally observed?
Yes.
When you were you, let me ask you this, were you at this particular party?
I was there. Others were holding Layla. I didn't really see the bruising until I saw the picture.
So in the person, you didn't notice it, but you saw it when you got the picture, is that correct?
Right.
And you also mentioned something else about the picture that you noticed.
Yeah, it looks like Jennifer's knuckles are all bruised.
They can go back up for now. Did you ever come to find out that your great-granddaughter had broken her leg?
Yes, when Jennifer sent me another photograph, from this time it was Layla on the exam table at the doctor's office.
And is that how you first found out about it?
As far as I can remember, yes.
Did Jennifer indicate how Layla had injured herself?
She said it happened at gymnastics.
Did she ever mention her also falling at your house?
Not to me.
Are you who Layla knows as Nana?
Yes.
Are you also who Millie knows as Nana?
Yes.
No one else in the family?
No.
And so Miss Rosenbaum never mentioned to you that that the girls fell at your house, correct?
No objection to meeting service?
When, if ever, did Miss Rosenbaum tell you that the girls, that Layla fell at your house?
I don't recall any instance.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. Prior to finding out about the broken leg, did you, when was the last time Layla was even over at your house?
It had been several weeks.
So, not 5 days?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. It's hard to remember those kinds of details.
Well, let me ask you this. To your recollection, it had been several weeks, correct?
It had been a while. She hadn't been over there a lot.
And when she was over there, did she ever play outside?
No, they never, well, no. Not at my house. Sometimes I would take them to the park or the splash pad or the swimming pool, but
Not at your house?
not at my house. No, they were always indoors.
So they never played outside of your house, correct?
No, there's nowhere to play.
Tell me about your backyard.
My backyard is all pavers, and the door to the backyard is blocked. You can't open it because my sister was living with me and her bed was against the door.
Are there any holes in your backyard?
No.
How about do you have a front yard?
Yeah, postage stamp.
Okay. Did the girls ever play outside in your front yard?
No. And there's no holes there either.
To your knowledge, did Layla ever fall in a hole at any yard near your house?
Not to my knowledge.
When the children were at your house, did you ever let them out of your sight?
No.
Now, when you heard that Layla had broken her leg, what was your reaction?
I just had a mental picture of her doing some kind of gymnastics and maybe falling on it or something. I don't know.
But is that what Ms. Rosenbaum had told you had happened?
She just said it happened at gymnastics.
At that point, did you think anything more than it was an accident?
No.
Talking a little bit more about gymnastics, to your knowledge, which girls were actually enrolled in gymnastics?
Both of them.
Now, who told you that both of them were enrolled?
Jennifer did.
Other than Jennifer telling you that, was there any other verification you had that Layla was actually enrolled in gymnastics?
No, I was sent pictures of Millie in her gymnastics outfit, and I was advised when they were going to be putting on a show in the McDonough Square, and told I could come and watch her. But that was it.
Did you ever get any photographs of Layla doing gymnastics?
No.
Did either Miss Rosenbaum or Mr. Rosenbaum ever mention anything about Layla hurting her arm?
No.
Did either of them ever mention anything about Millie hurting her arm?
No.
Do you recall the last time you saw your great-granddaughter alive?
It was that day at Noah's Ark, October 17th. 1 month to the day before she would die.
And what was the purpose of this gathering in Noah's Ark?
Millie's birthday, which was 2 weeks prior to that.
Did you see, and so at that you saw both Millie and Layla, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Layla. Did you see her mobile during that party?
I saw her being passed from person to person. I saw her being put in a wagon and taken for a ride.
I'm showing you what's been previously marked as states 155 and 156 for identification purposes. Do you recognize some of the people in that photograph?
Just the children.
And who do you recognize them to be?
Layla's in the front, Millie's in the back, and I don't know who that is in the middle.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I'd move to admit states 155 and 156 into evidence.
Admitted.
Ms. Banks, is this kind of what one of the observations you had at the Noah's Ark that day? Did you see? Is this the wagon that Layla had been in during that day?
Yes, but I can't even remember who was pulling them.
And you said you also noticed her passed around. At any point did you ever notice her walking that day?
Not to my recollection.
And again, the date on this is
October 17th.
October 17th.
In that previous picture with, no, never mind, that's something else.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now, they can come up for right now. Thanks. Did you spend any time with Millie on that particular day?
Well, it was unusual. She wasn't all over me like she usually is. And she wouldn't even sit on my lap. And I said, "What's the matter, Millie?" And she said, "Jennifer told me not to." And I said, "Why?" "I don't know."
I think this is child's hearsay. This falls under child's hearsay, Judge.
Overruled.
You can continue, ma'am.
She just said Jennifer told her not to. That's all the information she gave me.
Okay. Did you ever follow up with Jennifer about that?
I did. I mentioned to her that Millie's seemed to be acting strange toward me, and was there a problem? And she said, "Oh, well, we had a lot of family members that came from far away to see the girls, and I didn't want her spending all her time with you and your sister." Was that kind of the end of that discussion? Yes.
Still at this point, did you think that the girls were in any harm's way?
No, naively.
Do you recall the last time that Layla was at your house?
Not as far as the date, no.
That's okay. Do you remember her being there?
I remember her being there a few times.
Do you remember the last time, anything about when she left? Anything that stood out to you?
Oh, yeah. After Jennifer had strapped her into the child seat, I ducked into the door and leaned in to tell her goodbye and I love you, and she just reached for me like this, just with this desperate look in her eyes. And I thought, Layla doesn't love me like Millie does. She doesn't know me that well. Is she finally getting close to her Nana? Oh, I was so happy to see that.
Did Miss Rosenbaum say anything?
She said, oh, she does that with everybody.
And this was before the Noah's Ark, correct?
Yes.
Several weeks before?
I can't recall.
I want to talk to you a little bit about how you found out. How did you find out that your great-granddaughter had passed away?
It was very late on the night of. My daughter called me. I was in bed, groggily answered the phone. She was trying to tell me my baby was dead. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought maybe she was on drugs. I just hung up the phone. And then the next morning, I get a call from Layla's mother, and she's telling me the same thing. And she said,
Objection to what she said.
I'm not going to say that. So she wanted us to meet up with them at the police department in Stockbridge.
And did you do that?
We did. My sister and I did.
Did you go anywhere after the police department?
We went to the DFACS office.
And did you see anyone when you got to the DFACS office?
We were in the waiting room waiting to be seen when Jennifer and Joseph came out. And my sister hurried over to console Joseph, and I went over to hug Jennifer's neck, and I told her, I said, I'm so sorry, I just can't imagine what you've been through. I was devastated for her, because at that point, all we'd been told was it was a chicken bone that she choked on and died from.
At some point, did that understanding change?
Yes.
I want to go through with you a few more pictures, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to show you what's been previously marked as states 153 and 154. Do you recognize states 153 and 154?
Yes.
And what do you recognize them to be?
Joseph holding Layla like he was consoling her.
And is this something that you received?
Yes.
And who did you receive this from?
From Jennifer.
And how did you receive it?
Email.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I move into evidence states 153 and 154.
Objection?
No objection.
Admitted.
I want to show you what's been this photo. Is this the photo that we were talking about that you received?
Yes.
And what is the stamp or the date that's been stipulated to by the defense and the state? Do you see that at the top?
September 15th.
What year?
I guess it'll be 2015.
Okay. Now I can actually show you states 154. Do you see that blue highlighted section?
Yes.
Okay, and what's the date?
$2015.
That's okay. The
Still.
one you see up here, though, is
Yeah.
September 15th.
Right.
All right. Do you recall the date that you actually received this particular photograph?
No, I don't.
Would it help to refresh your recollection if I were to show you a document?
Yes.
Let me show you this document.
October 13th.
Almost a month later.
Mhm.
And was that via email?
Yes.
Was it your understanding that the photograph had been taken that night from that email?
Yes.
I also want to show you another set of photographs showing you states 157. (157) through 169. Can you take a chance to flip through those photographs? Do you recognize the people in those photographs?
All the people.
Do you recognize some of the people in those photographs?
I really wasn't trying to recognize them all. I saw myself, the girls, my sister, Joseph.
All right. And those are people you recognize, right?
Yes.
All right. I'll take them all from you. Your Honor,
I've never seen that one before.
do you recognize who that is?
That's Layla.
Okay. Your Honor, I move into evidence states 157 through 169. Defensive objection, Judge.
All right, third minute. You good now?
What are we looking at here? Who is this person?
That's Layla with her leg in a cast.
What are we looking at in this particular photograph?
That's a picnic table at Noah's Ark with the Millie's party.
What are we looking at? States 158.
Same.
States 160.
Yes, and Joseph's holding Layla in this picture.
And where's Layla?
She's in Joseph's arms.
About states 162.
That's my sister holding her, I think.
How about states 164?
Layla's sitting on my lap.
And states 167.
Layla on my lap.
The lights can come up. Lights can come up. Now I want to focus now on the period of time after Layla's death. Where did Millie go?
Mr. Chase, do you have a significant amount of work still to do with this?
I still probably have another 20 minutes.
Okay, let's go ahead and take our mid-afternoon break, 15 minutes, and we'll come back.